Fat Steve on Skype. He's been holding, and I've been putting him on hold and bringing him forward and all sorts of things.
Hey, Fat, do you mind them calling you Fat Steve?
No. In fact, I think I'm a little bit thinner than Stuart is. So,
what is your waist measurement, Fat?
Actually, I have a size 32 waist. I'm not really that
Christ,
fat.
that's not very fat at all.
I'm embarrassed myself now.
I don't want to tell you what mine is.
What's your neck measurement, Stuart?
19 inches.
Close.
Okay, Fat, go ahead.
Well, I first wanted to talk about the James Watson thing with his comments. I was reading about that. And I don't think they canceled it so much because, they were afraid that the comments were politically incorrect. I think it's because they realized that he was just sort of like a lunatic old man. Because when you think about it, you think, oh, well, okay, maybe he's going to say something really intelligent about DNA and genetics. And then he gave us his reason because, like, a few black people who've worked for him were very unreliable.
Yeah, I caught that, but I still want to hear him say it, mate. I don't want to read that's what a journalist heard him say. I don't want that. That is censorship. That's getting in the way of me making my own judgment about a person who's being judged now globally, and that's wrong.
Oh, well,
I want to hear him say that. I want to say to him, did you say that? And is all you've got to go on in saying that black people aren't as intelligent as white people the fact that you have had 4 guys who drove your car into the garage wall or what? I want to know that, because I think a man of his once intelligence would have a little bit more to go on than that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you got to realize that, if a private concern is going to have him speaking at their event, they're going to be worried that, well, if he says this, what else is he going to do? Is he going to start waving his private parts around?
If he wants to do that, what's wrong with that?
Exactly, it's his prerogative.
Exactly.
I wave mine around whenever I like.
He does.
I'm the station manager.
Yeah, I guess you could here, couldn't you? Yeah. Okay.
And about David Irving, I disagree with what the Austria government did, because I don't think he should be put in jail for free speech. But as far as like him getting his point across on various media outlets, I mean, I don't think it's important that someone who's going to disagree with the most documented event in human history gets his point across, because it's like someone who's saying the earth is flat.
No, that's not true.
Well, why isn't that true? I mean, it's,
not true. Churchill said, famously, in war, the first casualty is always truth. Correct?
Correct.
Why did that ship in 1917 sail to Great Britain?
The Lusitania?
Yeah. Why did that sail to Great Britain with the information out there that it was carrying weapons as well as men, women and children? And wasn't the sinking of that ship quite useful to the overall the then purpose of the United States government, which was to enter the war, but they needed something to trigger American reaction so that decision would be welcomed and seen as patriotic rather than sort of far-sighted. And ditto Pearl Harbor. We're not certain, are we, that those things weren't manipulated?
I definitely agree that things can be manipulated, and I didn't say that things can't be manipulated, but there's a major difference between hiding one person's or one group of people's manipulation and documenting, a tragedy of human history where there is plenty of evidence that you can look at.
Well, I'd like to hear what David Irving has to say. I'd like to hear him present his case. I'd like to find out whether he's merely asking questions, which I think is what every historian and journalist should do, or whether he's made his mind up and he's got a point of view which he can't substantiate with evidence.
But, I mean, there's plenty of things that are available that give that point of view. I don't think that it's necessarily being hidden. I think it's given exactly the amount.
You've been told that there's plenty of evidence, but you've never gone to see any of it yourself. Am I right?
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, I have never looked at any evidence that
the one thing. In
the same way, I've never looked at evidence that Ben Franklin existed. I've never looked at evidence that George Washington actually existed. I've never looked at any evidence proving most of the things that happened in history. I don't really, think that that's that important.
Yeah, well, it is if you're going to argue that.
Why don't you think that? Why don't you think that's important? Why don't you think that it's important? Why do you think the GIs collected the dirt from every one of the beaches that they landed on and took it home with them? Because that was it. That was the evidence that these things took place. Somebody, my other half, was telling me that someone she knew came back, actually, from Auschwitz just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and said that actually the experience was actually spoilt by the number of tourists that were there, the number of coaches of people that were turning up to see all these things.
Sitting down with packed lunches.
Unbelievable.
Taking photographs of each other with their arms around each other.
That's right. I mean, we were here. And there's stuff still there. The suitcases are all still there with names chalked on them, and there's all stuff. But, okay, that's what we've been told took place there. That's what's been written in the books. But who put them there?
But the point is, okay.
Who put them there?
What David Irving is not... You see... David Irving is not arguing that some of the facts are slightly incorrect. What David Irving is going ahead and arguing is that the Holocaust never happened. And all, the fact that all
I've got to interrupt you, Fat. I've got to interrupt you. I don't believe he is saying that. But I want to know what he is saying. Yeah, and the only way I'm going to find out what the fuck he is saying is if we allow him to say what he's saying. And I trust you, and I trust the guys here, and I trust the rest of the contributors to this show, and I actually trust the planet Earth. I trust everybody on Earth, apart from 1 or 2 nutcases who are already Nazis, to be able to make an intelligent decision about whether he's asking some sensible questions. I don't know what the man's voice sounds like. Nor do you.
Well, I mean, if you're, I can honestly say, I can't sit here and argue about David Irving because, like what I told you, I disagree with sending him to jail for anything that he says. I don't see what he has. You would have to make the argument to me as to what he's saying
and supposing
that's different than anything that disproves anything that I know now.
Supposing I was now going to make this argument to you here on Play Radio UK live, and Tommy said, "No, Marcus, I'm not going to allow you to say that." That's what we're talking about here. That's the principle we're talking about here. Yep. Tommy would then be oppressing me again.
Oh, Marcus. Again, which I usually do so subtly, he doesn't know it.
Yeah. That's what he thinks, you see, but I know.
Steve, I'll tell you the one thing that I've often wondered about the Holocaust, which if it took place at all, even in a very small, scaled-down way, which is actually what David Irving is saying, and he's also saying that Hitler didn't really know much about what was going on, and that's another thing. But do you know the one thing that's always crossed my mind whenever there is a series of public events reminding us about the Holocaust is the sheer number of Auschwitz survivors who they get into the studios and who you read being interviewed in the newspapers and who you see speaking at the United Nations. If that was such an extermination camp, I'm astonished that so many people, Jews, spent the entire war at Auschwitz and were allowed to live by the Nazis when they vacated the place.
Okay, I will address that. Okay, first of all, that's entirely anecdotal because you're not giving a number. You're saying there's so many, but okay. First of all, I can only speak of my own personal experience and my family's experience, which I didn't even know what it was until a few years ago when I went back to Poland and Amsterdam.
I'm just going to, for professional reasons, ask you to react a little bit more to what I've said, which would be useful.
Well, if you said to me there are 2 million Auschwitz survivors, I'd say, okay, that's very strange. But you're just saying so many.
Have you ever heard of any?
Have I ever heard of anyone surviving Auschwitz? Yeah. Yes, but
how can they do that? How can they do that? How can you be a Jew who survives the entire war at an extermination camp and be allowed to live afterwards by the people who apparently carried out humanity's greatest crime? Wouldn't they have been shot as potential witnesses? How can you be an Auschwitz survivor and you've admitted that you know that there is one? There are actually loads, but there is one. How can that person have survived that? Steve.
Okay, well, I think you have a very narrow view of what history's greatest crime is.
No, just tell me how the fuck the person could have survived. How the fuck a Jewish person could have survived 5 years at an extermination camp where millions of other Jews were being exterminated, and then after the war, when the Germans left Auschwitz, knowing that what we are going to be told is that it was the scene of the greatest crime humanity's ever committed. They went, well, we'll just leave these people here. They will be able to point the finger at us. They will be able to tell the world what went on here. But, we'll grow moustaches. For fuck's sake, Steve, explain. How did they survive?
I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain. First of all, it wasn't, how many people are you saying it's claimed were exterminated in the camps by mass extermination, or people who died of disease in the camps? Or are we talking about people who, okay, as I said, I can only speak about my family members, and it was my great-grandparents who
How did they survive, Steve?
My great-grandparents did not survive.
How did survivors survive? I'm really interested.
Okay, wait, but my great-uncle, he was sent to Dachau, which was a political prisoner camp. He was sent there in 1938. In 1939, they released him, and he fled to America. He couldn't get my great-grandparents' passports. He couldn't get them over to...
You're drifting way off the point. If you can't answer the question, then just agree that you can't answer the question.
I'm not entirely sure what your question is.
Oh, for goodness sake. No, you've got to go away now. That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, does anybody on planet Earth not know what my question is?
Yes. The question is, how did they survive in such a ruthless extermination camp?
How did a person survive? Yeah, for 5 years? There are people who said, I was an Auschwitz. If it happened...
Just being fucking good at playing dead.